Good afternoon, everyone. This is Colleen Rice with Leadership Medina County, and I want to welcome you to our monthly Lunch and Learn podcast and webinar. This month, we're featuring grant funding opportunities for Medina County communities through the Ohio Development Services Agency, the Office of Community Development, with Sonja Pagniano. If you have any questions during this webinar, we will be taking questions at the end of the presentation. You can either use your controls on the webinar if you've logged in, or you can also text me your questions by texting them to 330-391-8238. Again, you can text your questions to me at 330-391-8238. Thank you, and it's my pleasure at this point to introduce you to our speaker today. We have Sonja Pagniano, and Sonja, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So excited about learning about some grants that will benefit Medina County and our communities within our county. And tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing for the Medina County Department of Planning Services.
Yeah, so in our office, we work with the Ohio Development Services Agency, and they have a variety of grant programs that I'll be covering today. Part of this process is a public meeting process that we just recently completed on Monday. We've added this webinar thanks to Leadership Medina County to make sure that we have this information available also at all times for you as we open up our grant applications process.
Well, thank you, Sonja. I'm going to let you go ahead and get started. And we are recording this webinar today, and we will be providing to you the slides after the presentation so that if you have any questions or you'd like to revisit a slide, you can. So thank you, Sonja, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to share today.
Thank you. So this is the Community Development Implementation Strategy webinar. As I mentioned, the purpose of the CDIS, or Community Development Implementation Strategy, is to facilitate communication with our stakeholders in eligible communities. This CDIS supplements our citizen participation process. We identify key stakeholders and they're invited to these meetings. The CDBG program information is distributed and participation is encouraged. In this case, your participation is encouraged at the end of this presentation. For our public meetings, we had meeting requirements, so a sign-in sheet, outreach plan, agenda and minutes, and a needs worksheet. So for the citizen participation section, this is required for all of our grants and must include at least 2 public hearings. The first one would be to discuss funding opportunities and requirements. So that was the February meetings we just had. We decided this year to split those up into more than one, so we actually offered 4 total public meetings for this process. The second one is for each grant application to discuss the specifics of the submitted applications that we receive. So that will be 1 public May meeting. The date is still to be decided. So next I'll cover our grant funding opportunities. These are for Medina County communities through the Ohio Development Services Agency, Office of Community Development. The first 3 that I'll cover are the Community Development Block Grant Allocation Grant, also known as CDBG. The next set are competitive community development programs, neighborhood revitalization and downtown revitalization. These are the 3 main big grant programs that are available through ODSA. I'll also cover some other opportunities as well that you might be interested in. So with regards to the CDBG allocation, every other year, Medina County is eligible as a non-entitlement county. Allocation funding can be used as leverage for the competitive neighborhood revitalization, downtown revitalization, and critical infrastructure programs. What happens with the allocation is the county applies for this grant, and we ask cities, townships, villages, and nonprofits to submit applications for funding. Typically, we choose 4 projects from the cities, townships, and villages. In the past, we have only funded Medina County Transit as our nonprofit for public service. Projects can include public facilities, public services, housing, infrastructure improvements, economic development, and fair housing activities. The grant amount notifications are typically released by OCD in April. We receive a minimum $150,000 biennial allocation, which is then dispersed to each eligible community. Funding allocations for eligible communities are determined by taking the number of low and moderate income individuals in the community, dividing that amount by the total number of the LMI individuals in non-entitlement areas, and multiplying that by the amount of CDBG program funds allocated for community development. In the past, we have received a little over $300,000 for just Medina County. Public service, fair housing, and administration activities or projects are limited to specific amounts of the total allocation. Typically, it's 15% of the total allocation. For the county, that means 15% of our total allocation can go to public service, and 15% can go to fair housing and administration activities or planning projects. So public service, if you are a nonprofit and you would like to apply for the grant, the CDBG allocation grant, you must apply as a new service or a quantifiable increase in the existing service level you are providing. Public service must also serve limited clientele, which I will go into more detail later. Next, I will cover the neighborhood revitalization and downtown revitalization grants. For downtown revitalization, applicants can only address conditions in their central business district. Not all communities in Medina County have a central business district defined. Some of these communities would have to first define a central business district before they are eligible to apply for this grant. Eligible activities include, but are not limited to, uniform facade and sign improvements, interior and exterior building code violation corrections, streetscape activities, other eligible CDBG infrastructure and rehabilitation activities. This grant program aids in the elimination of slum and blight, creates and retains permanent private sector job opportunities for LMI individuals through targeted investment in facade improvements. This grant is capped at $250,000. It is a competitive grant. It's an open cycle, meaning it's available every year, and it typically opens up in July. Next, I will cover the neighborhood revitalization grant. This is very similar to the downtown, but it does have some other eligibility criteria. This grant is designed to improve the quality of life, livability, and functionality of distressed areas and neighborhoods through a targeted investment in public facilities such as the construction, reconstruction, or rehabilitation of public infrastructure in LMI neighborhoods. Eligible activities include constructing, reconstructing, or rehabilitating public facilities in targeted distressed areas that do not fit within the criteria of other CDBG competitive programs. Applicants can only address one target area per application submission. A low and moderate income population of at least 51% is required. There are some communities in our county that can complete confidential income surveys to assess if the population in that area is at least 51% low-moderate income. Applications must also include 3 activities together. An example of this would be sidewalk repairs, street lighting, and demolition. These are competitive grants as well, but they are capped at $750,000. They are also open cycle, and the application typically opens in June. There are other opportunities I will cover now. The first one is the critical infrastructure grant. The next one is the residential public infrastructure grant. And then finally, I'll be going over some economic development opportunities. So the critical infrastructure grant is designed to assist communities with high priority infrastructure improvements. This includes roads, storm drainage, and other public facilities projects. Water and sanitary sewer projects that are not eligible for the Residential Public Infrastructure Grant Program may also be considered for critical infrastructure funding. This grant is capped at $500,000, is open cycle, and typically opens in July. So some eligible activities for this grant are constructing, reconstructing, or rehabilitating infrastructure components. Some eligible infrastructure would include streets and bridges, sidewalks, flood and drainage, water, and sanitary sewer. Projects selected for funding must have a high community-wide impact, and projects must serve areas that are primarily residential. They cannot be used for projects designed primarily for future residential, commercial, or industrial development. So a good example of the public infrastructure requirement, the county is planning to apply in partnership with Lafayette Township for June of 2020 for a critical infrastructure grant. We tried to apply last year and were denied, and that was in part because the land was not yet publicly owned. We plan to apply again because the land should be publicly owned at that point. So it is very important that these projects are to assist the applicant communities with high priority single component projects such as roads, flood and drainage, and other public infrastructure improvements with a high community-wide impact. Residential Public Infrastructure Grant Program. Non-entitlement counties, cities, and villages qualify. So to give you some background on what non-entitlement means, this classification indicates that the local government does not qualify to receive CDBG directly from HUD. So the county is a non-entitlement county. We receive our CDBG from the state and not directly from HUD. Projects must serve areas that are primarily residential. Eligible on-site improvements are service laterals, septic tanks, well abandonment, and CDBG eligible related fees. Counties must apply for unincorporated areas or villages that have not demonstrated the capacity to operate a public water or wastewater system. Application for primarily on-site funding will not be considered. This program provides funding to ensure a safe and sanitary living environment for Ohio citizens through the provision of safe and reliable drinking water and proper disposal of sanitary waste. The RPIG program only funds projects which provide water and/or sanitary sewer service to primarily residential users. Communities receive grants up to $750,000 to improve the safety and reliability of drinking water and sanitary sewer systems. Up to $100,000 of the award may be used for on-site improvements. Now we're going into the economic development portion of this presentation. The first item I'm covering is called the Microenterprise Business Development Program. Microenterprises are commonly defined as for-profit entities with fewer than 5 employees, one of whom owns the business. Community Development Corporation Microenterprise Business Development Program provides funds on a competitive basis to eligible CDCs to assist with the development of local microenterprise businesses. There's also an Economic Development Loan Program. This creates and retains permanent private sector job opportunities for low and moderate income citizens. Both fixed asset loans and public off-site infrastructure assistance are available. Non-entitlement cities and counties may apply on behalf of for-profit businesses committing to creating at least 5 jobs within their jurisdiction. This loan program also has a revolving loan fund component. The goal of this is to provide low-interest, fixed-asset gap financing to local businesses. The program income is maintained in a separate account called a revolving loan fund that the local governments administer. These economic development grants generate program income when people repay their loan payments. Revolving loan fund dollars can also be used to fund other economic development projects, including public off-site infrastructure improvements tied to job creation or retention, downtown facade improvements, historic preservation, and any other CDBG eligible activity. It is important to note that the loan program is specifically designed to give loans first. If a community finds that they cannot find people that are interested in the loan program, that's when these revolving loan fund dollars can be used to fund other economic development projects. So for the revolving loan fund, loan repayments return to the local revolving loan fund and may be used to finance other projects as well in the community. At least 51% of full-time permanent jobs created or retained must be taken by or made available to low to moderate income individuals. Assistance is limited to $25,000 per job created. Communities can fund up to 50% of the total financing required for the project, so a 1-to-1 leverage ratio. A borrower must invest at least 5% in cash equity toward the project's fixed asset cost. At least 15% of project's fixed asset cost must be privately financed. Loans are only available for projects that require gap financing. In all cases, private financing should be maximized before considering the CDBG assistance. There's also, through the Economic Development Loan Program, off-site infrastructure grants. Communities can provide grants for publicly owned infrastructure improvements directly related to job creation or retention by a for-profit business. This is similar to the last one. At least 51% of full-time permanent jobs created or retained must be taken by or made available to low to moderate income individuals. Assistance is limited to $9,999 per job created. It is limited to 50% of the total off-site infrastructure cost in most cases. Some distressed communities may qualify for up to 75% of the off-site infrastructure cost. Business must commit to on-site private investment, and at least 15% of the project's fixed asset cost must be privately financed. I'm also providing other funding opportunities that can be leveraged with these grant options. There are several others out there as well that we can also help you find. If you need help, you can contact our office. The first one is the Ohio Public Works Commission. You can apply through the county engineer. The Ohio Facilities Construction Commission has a cultural facilities grant. We do have the Community Housing Improvement Program, which is home rehabilitation. You can contact the county for more information. Clean Ohio Trails, land acquisition for a trail, trail development, trailhead facilities, engineering, and design. NatureWorks, this is a 75% reimbursement grant, so it's state funding for acquisition, development, or rehabilitation of public park and recreation areas. Land and Water Conservation Fund, this provides up to 50% for acquisition and development of outdoor recreation projects. The Ohio History Connection has certified local government grants. This can help you set up your historic district in your community. Preservation-related funding through the History Fund. The Cynthia Woods Mitchell Fund for Historic Interiors. This is a grant to assist in the preservation, restoration, and interpretation of historic interiors. Individuals and for-profit businesses may apply, but it must be a historic landmark. And then the Barn Again program. This is a national program providing information to help owners of old barns rehabilitate them and put them back to productive use on farms and ranches. Just note that this one is non-cash technical assistance, and that means someone would come out and help you with that instead of getting grant funding. The Ohio Historic Preservation and the Federal Historic Rehabilitation Investment have tax credit programs for historic properties. There were 6 grants available through One Main Financial made on Main Street. These were community action grants worth $25,000 for innovative community transformation projects led by leaders across the country. There's also private foundations in this area: Medina County Community Fund, the Hands Foundation, Medina County Arts Foundation. We do have economic development support through the Medina County Economic Development Corporation. There's also additional resources available out there. If you're unsure, please don't hesitate to reach out to your local representatives, House, Senate, commissioners, and so on. So the following are our county staff liaisons to the state: Scott Miller, our county administrator; Rob Henwood, director of Medina County Department of Planning Services and Fair Housing Office; Sonja Pagniano, so that's myself, associate planner, Medina County Department of Planning Services and Fair Housing Office; Cheryl Heinley is our Fair Housing Coordinator, Medina County Department of Planning Services and Fair Housing Office; and then Mike Pataki, Drew Lacey, and Laura Layback at the Medina County Finance Department work closely with all of us, especially for the CHIP program. The following are Ohio Development Services Agency contacts. Feel free to reach out to these folks if you have a grant idea or you have a project you're working on and you're not sure if maybe it qualifies or falls into a category. Wesley Watkins is our local county contact, 614-466-9336. They also have a Northeast Regional Office, and that's 216-787-3240. Next, I'll cover the national objectives. You have to qualify for at least one national objective to be able to have a successful CDBG allocation grant application. The one that I always tell people to ignore is the meet an urgent need of the community where existing conditions pose a serious threat to health and welfare. It is very difficult to use that as your national objective. There would have to be an emergency crisis, like a major tornado going through and destroying a community, to be able to qualify for that national objective. The other two are benefit low and moderate income persons or areas with greater than 51% LMI population, and the other one is aid in the elimination of slum and blight. So low and moderate income. This is 80% of median income. Service area must be greater than or equal to 51% LMI. There are income surveys that you can do to update your service area LMI, but it's only for certain townships and villages in our community. You can do this through a confidential survey. There's random statistical sampling based on the number of households in the service area. This does take some time to complete, so make sure to start it early. The census is also a vital component to the low-income census tracts, because those tell us essentially where we can spend our CDBG allocation. So census tracts are established by the U.S. Census Bureau and often equate to what we may commonly think of as a neighborhood or subdivision. In cities, a single zip code could have several census tracts located in it. That's because generally, census tracts include between 2,500 and 8,000 people living in them. So the more people living in an area, the more census tracts will likely be there. A low-income census tract is an area where more than half of the people living in that census tract meet the definition of low income. So if a census tract has 4,000 people living in it and more than 50% of those people are low income, then the entire census tract is considered low income as well. This is really important because there is a 2020 census coming out. In March, you should be receiving mail in your mailbox to complete it. So we are encouraging everybody to please get the word out, self-report. This is very vital data for our community. It tells us where we can spend our grant dollars, and it assists many communities in determining where their needs are. So here are the current income guidelines. These are based on the 2019 HUD income limits. To give you an idea, a low-income individual, if it's one person in the household, if they're making $40,000, they would qualify for these grant programs. They would qualify as a low, moderate income individual. If there are 5 individuals living in a home, let's say a mom, a dad, and 3 kids, and they're making $60,000 a year gross, they would qualify for these grant programs. Here are some county profile demographics. There is a link at the bottom there. It's kind of hard to see. If you go onto ODSA's website, they have an interactive map where you can look up an address and see if it falls into a low, moderate income census tract block group. So here are the ones that we found. that are definitely over 51% in our community. Now I'm covering limited clientele. Limited clientele include abused children, elderly persons, battered spouses, homeless persons, severely disabled adults, illiterate adults, persons with AIDS, and migrant farm workers. Limited clientele are presumed to be principally LMI. Public service projects must solely serve limited clientele. If limited clientele is chosen to meet your national objective, you must provide the following documentation. Show the project is designed to be used exclusively by a segment of the population presumed to be LMI. Describe how the nature and the location of the project establish that it will be used predominantly by LMI persons. Data showing each person's family size and annual income that receive that benefit, or data showing each mobility or accessibility barriers have been removed. If you are looking to remove mobility or accessibility barriers, especially for older or severely disabled adults, please note the activity must be restricted to the extent practicable to remove such barriers. Otherwise, reconstructing or improving a public facility does not qualify as area benefit, is not eligible as a limited clientele project. Slum and blight. This is the other national objective criteria. Area slum and blight. If you choose that as your national objective, your project must meet all of the following criteria. Officially designated by the applicant and must meet a definition of a slum, blighted, deteriorated, or deteriorating area under state or local law. The designation is valid for 5 years. Typically, your local municipality would have a person that can sign off that the area is slum, blighted, deteriorated, or deteriorating. The applicant must maintain documentation of the area boundaries and conditions that qualified it at the time of designation. Projects must be limited to those that address one or more of the conditions that contributed to the area's deterioration. Projects are not limited to those that address the blight or decay itself, but may also include those that address a condition deemed to have contributed to the area's decline. The area must exhibit at least one of the following physical signs of blight or decay. At least 51% of the buildings in the defined area must be substandard, or at least 51% of the public facilities in the defined area must be substandard. The public improvements taken as a whole must exhibit blight or decay. It is insufficient for only one type of public improvement to be in a state of deterioration. So let's say you have a neighborhood, it's got a road that has just got tons of potholes in it. If that's the only thing that needs a public improvement, then that doesn't mean that the area is deteriorating, slum, blighted. You would have to have a failed road, maybe some sidewalks that are crumbling, for that to be at least 51%. Reconstructing or improving a public facility that does not qualify as area benefit is not eligible under slum and blight unless it is located in a designated central business district. There's also an option under this. It is called spot slum and blight. Spot slum and blight is limited to clearance, historic preservation, building rehab to the extent necessary to eliminate specific conditions that are detrimental to public health and safety, acquisition and or relocation. Spot slum and blight is designated to eliminate specific conditions of blight or physical decay not located in a designated slum or blighted area. So if you have a vacant building that needs demolished, that would count as spot slum and blight. Next, I'll introduce you to our County Fair Housing Office. Our mission is to prevent and eliminate housing discrimination and promote equal housing opportunity for Medina County. We address issues of housing discrimination, and we also assist with tenant-landlord concerns, though the tenant-landlord concerns are often forwarded to community legal aid for additional advice. The Fair Housing Act is a federal act to ensure equal housing opportunity by prohibiting discrimination in the sale, rental, and financing of dwellings, as well as other housing-related transactions based on race, color, national origin, religion, sex, familial status, and disability. State and local laws may extend the protections to other groups of people by adding additional protected classes to their fair housing policies. For example, our county does protect more protected classes than just those listed previously, and each individual community may have additional protected classes as well. If you are interested in filing a fair housing complaint or you have a client that could use our assistance, you can have them call our number, email our fair housing email address, or ask them to come to the fair housing office to speak with our fair housing coordinator, Cheryl Heinley. The Fair Housing Coordinator will evaluate the complaint and offer the intake paperwork, which can be completed in person or emailed or mailed to be completed at home. When the intake paperwork is submitted back to our office, the Fair Housing Coordinator assesses the complaint and begins the investigation process. Complaints can be filed or forwarded directly to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, or the Ohio Civil Rights Commission, OCRC, for further investigation and determination. We recently completed an analysis of impediments to fair housing choice in 2019. Our next update of that document is in 2024. This is completed every 5 years and is a requirement through HUD. So how do you apply for our grants? The CDBG allocation application is going out publicly March 6th. Applications are currently available on our website if you'd like to get a head start. For the other programs, you can contact our office. The applications for the CDBG allocation are due April 24th, 2020 at 4:30 p.m. Ohio time. Communities, so cities, townships, villages, and nonprofits are eligible to apply. Only complete applications will be reviewed and ranked, and then a May public meeting will take place reviewing the received applications as part of the CDIS process. Projects selected will then be announced by June. So we asked our community at the public meetings what they needed, and the following is kind of a brief overview of those submissions. So Brunswick Hills has some structures that they would like demolished. City of Brunswick had several different ideas and grants that they were interested in possibly combining. Brunswick, we got a request for an intersection that affects several students and families. It's a dangerous intersection over there. Brunswick, several requests for park-related projects. Chippewa Lake, they'd like LED street lighting throughout their village. Lodi Historical Society is seeking an ADA ramp like the ones that we're completing for Hinckley and Spencer. And in Lodi, there's a nonprofit that could use a whole house generator to serve its residents. All of their residents are limited clientele. Lodi, there are several different projects at the community park that could use assistance, as well as installation of a splash pad and fountain repairs in their downtown. Office of Older Adults was thinking about having additional meal delivery to seniors, funding additional meals to non-grant recipients. There was a request for maybe an out-of-county transportation initiative that would serve all of Medina County. Office of Older Adults could serve as the hub for it, so that seniors who do not and cannot drive but maybe need vital services in and out of the county to hospitals would utilize that. In Wadsworth, they're looking to expand, maybe create a historic district. They're looking to expand their art mural project. And then there was a request for maybe a county-wide housing voucher rental assistance program to help supplement the ever-increasing need of rental assistance in our county. So I'm open now to questions. Thank you for participating.
Thank you so much, Sonja. So we have turned on the Q&A session now, and you can use your computers to send us a question, and we can put you in the queue. You can also text me a question at 330-391-8238, and we'll answer your call during this conference call. And just looking for a question now. Well, while we're waiting for you guys to come up with your questions, I would like to thank our sponsors, Automation Tool and Die, Sandridge Food Corporation, the University of Akron, Westfield and Westfield Bank, Huntington Bank, and RPM International for supporting us. It's because of their support that we can do webinars like this and provide information to our alumni in unique ways. So we hope that you're enjoying these webinars. We also hope that you'll have the opportunity to share with us any ideas that you would like to have for the future for webinars. Sonja, what's your wish from a webinar like this and giving out this information? I know we have a lot of nonprofits and others on the call, but what do you think would be a good outcome from this program today?
I think a great outcome would be seeing more nonprofits applying for the public service portion of our allocation grant. I'd love to see more citizens participating on a more local level, talking about what their needs are to their elected officials, voicing areas maybe where they know they could see projects happen and what those projects maybe could look like. It's really important for us not only that we maximize our funding in this county, but that we're also leveraging it and collaborating with other organizations in our county. So I would really love to see more of that.
Those are great outcomes. Well, as I said earlier, it doesn't look like we have any questions, but as I said earlier, we will definitely share the recording from today back with you and all the slides. I know there were a lot of phone numbers and different things, and if you're listening and you didn't get to write it down because maybe you're driving in this terrible weather right now, we'll send those over to you so you can get connected like Sonja is recommending. Reach out, ask questions. She's definitely available to answer questions and is a fantastic resource in our community. So Sonja, it's been so nice getting to know you better today.
Thank you so much, yes.
We enjoyed having you, and I want to thank all of our listeners today, and stay tuned. We will be planning another webinar for next month, and again, please send me your ideas. This is Colleen Rice. I'm Executive Director at Leadership Medina County. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.